So we just wanted to start by introducing ourselves. My name is Valerie Camo. I am one of the academic advisors in undergraduate academic services here at Bentley. I also happen to be a Bentley alum. I have spent almost 14 years working at Bentley. It'll be 14 years next month. My first 8 years at Bentley, I worked as a transfer admission counselor, helping students who are looking to transfer come into the university, and have been fortunate in recent years to be working from an advising perspective.
And hi everybody, I'm Catalina. I go by Kat. I use a she series pronouns. I'm also one of the academic advisors in academic services. I've been here for 3 years, originally from Jersey, so I saw some Jersey people here. Welcome. Welcome to all of you as well. And so today we're going to really go over the agenda for today's presentation. And so we're really going to be talking about the different stops on a student's academic journey here at Bentley, starting with first year and their senior year, and then also talk about the different academic support services we have available at Bentley for students. And then we'll kind of end with a Q&A, and so you'll have an opportunity to ask questions about our curriculum or any questions that you may have for us as academic advisors, and we'll kind of help you sort those out if you have any.
So we want to start with an overview of how academic advising works at Bentley. And we have two slightly different paths depending upon whether the student joined us as a first-year student, so right out of high school, or as a transfer student. So students who join us right out of high school, part of their first term, so if we have any first-year families in the room, your students will be taking first-year seminar this fall. This is a 1-credit course. It's really designed to help students acclimate to the university, particularly from an academic perspective. Their first-year seminar instructor is a faculty member on campus, and that faculty member will serve as your students' assigned advisor for their first year. First-year seminar course also has a peer leader who co-facilitates the class and can serve as a mentor for the students in the class, help them kind of really understand the student experience, and the peer leader can share some tips from their own personal experience, provide guidance as to where to go on campus for different things. But again, it's a team approach to teaching the course, and the faculty member is the student's assigned advisor for that first year. After the student completes their first year, they will then be transitioned to have an assigned academic advisor within our office. And so that advisor would be their assigned advisor from their second year all the way through their time of completion. Transfer students start on a slightly different path because they are coming to us after prior experience at the university level. And because almost by definition, they have less time with us here at Bentley, they're immediately assigned an advisor in our office, and that advisor will be their transfer seminar instructor for their first term. And so that enables the transfer student to work with that advisor from start to finish, make sense of their transfer credit, figure out what they should be doing and when academically, and make the most of their time. I do want to mention that when we talk about assigned advisors, that is a designated resource for the student. That's what the system would show as a point of contact. But the student is more than welcome to connect with anybody in our office, you know, as their schedule permits. So we have a few different ways that students connect with us. The most kind of ad hoc method would be drop-ins. We hold those weekdays from 11 to 3. Drop-ins are typically covered by our peer advisors. So these would be juniors and seniors. We have 6 of them total, and they're highly trained. And they can also offer their experience, you know, navigating the curriculum, how they chose their major and why. And these are designed for quick questions. So they're about 10 minutes in length. They don't require an appointment. So they're the great opportunity for students, like in between a class, if they had a quick question, come by our office, ask their question, get some information that can then help them move forward. If a student needs a longer conversation, maybe they want to talk about choosing their major or long-range planning, they would make an appointment. We have a system where they can do that. The appointments are about 30 minutes in length. Give us time to delve into more details, dig through kind of the questions, the concerns, and those, like I said, can be scheduled throughout the term. In addition to that, throughout the semester, we offer programming. So that can vary from pop-up advising. We have workshops about our degree works audit, how to understand that and interpret that. We have an academic programs fair that I'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. We have a bi-weekly newsletter that we send out to students that has key dates, key information. So these are all ways that students can also connect with our office from day one all the way through when they complete their studies.
And so our first stop is the first year experience. So transition to acclimation. And really when we think about the first year experience, we're thinking about adjusting to the Bentley campus. We're thinking about, making friends. We're thinking about getting familiarized with the Bentley curriculum. But one of the cool things about Bentley that I always like to emphasize is we really try to introduce students to our Bentley curriculum by using like all the same classes throughout their first year. So all of them will be taking the same first year classes in the first year. Sorry about that. So as you see here, you'll see the first year seminar and career development seminar. In the first year seminar, they'll really get an introduction like a Bentley 101. And the career development seminar, they're getting introduced to a career advisor. We have one here as well. So shout out to Paul. They'll also be taking IT 101, expository writing 101, math or math 2, depending if they brought AP or IB credit. They'll also be taking GB 110 and GB 112. And in their second semester of their first year, they'll be taking GB 212. Some of them might be interested in taking some general education requirements. Those may look like psychology, sociology, history, again, depending on the credit that they brought prior to Bentley. So we really want to emphasize that the first year is really the foundational year. It's, typically our first year students, some of them may know what they want to do, some of them may not know. So this is really a chance for them to get kind of into the weeds of what potentially their majors might look like. But that will be talked a little bit more in the second year, where more of that exploration and kind of finding the right fit comes into play. So Val's going to talk about our second year experience.
So sophomore year, first in terms of the curriculum, students will continue with general business core classes. The sophomore sequence can oftentimes serve as prerequisites for courses in a major. And then also taking classes like micro and macroeconomics. So again, still working through some of the required core requirements, either in our general education sequence or the general business sequence. Sophomore year, really from an academic perspective, is about decision making, and it can often feel really stressful for students. So when we talk about decisions, that's everything from what their major is going to be, students declare their major in sophomore year, if they want to do an optional second major, if they're going to do a minor, if they want to study abroad, all of these things start to get determined in sophomore year. And so it can oftentimes feel, I think, a little bit overwhelming for students in terms of making these decisions, choosing from, a variety of options that are available to them. The way that I typically talk about major selection with students is that ideally it's the intersection of their interests, their skill sets, and their goals. So what are the academic programs that we offer that, kind of represent that cross-functionality? We've also, kind of in recognition of the fact that it can still feel overwhelming to make this decision, have designed a 4-step process to guide students through that process. There's a resource that we have copies of here that outlines that, but basically the 4 steps are assess, explore, connect, and decide. So assess, really, doing some self-assessment, using tools that are available to them to learn more about themselves. And again, this speaks to the kind of the interest in the skill sets areas, reflecting on courses that they've enjoyed, courses that, if they can take more, they would love to. The explore is doing research, using resources, learning more about the programs, what's required, and then start to assess, to consider how, that lines up with what they're looking to do. Connect is really about connecting with, whether it's our office, faculty on campus. One of our major events that our office hosts is the Academic Programs Fair that I mentioned briefly. That is an event that we hold annually in the 3rd week of October. And it's set up like a college fair. So we have faculty from every department available, and students can go from table to table to ask questions and learn more about the major or minor that they're interested in. What are the required courses like? What are potential internship opportunities? What are career paths that recent graduates with that major might have done? We also have the Career Development Center there, so that way they can provide some insight on these pieces and kind of experiences of our students. So again, students are still gathering information. In this 4-step process, we have worksheets designated for each step so that students can kind of capture their thoughts, start comparing programs. And then ultimately in the decide section is where they will reach some conclusions about which programs are best suited for them. I should mention that students can change their major later on. So if they make this initial decision and it doesn't feel right, They have the option to change their major. Typically, we encourage students to connect with us to do some planning in that respect, really to determine if they change their major, can they still complete their studies in a timely manner? What does that look like moving forward? I should also mention that that long-range planning process can be really helpful for students who have a lot on their academic to-do list. If they want to do a major and a minor and an LSM and study abroad, certainly doable, but it requires really careful planning. So if they want to connect with us to learn more about the curriculum rules and policies that govern those programs and how to fit it all in as efficiently as possible, we can help them with that as well. I think sophomore year also becomes a time when students start to dig in a little bit more in terms of their campus involvement. And so the organizations that maybe they joined in their first year, this might be the time where they're refining those involvements and maybe starting to take more of an active role in those groups. So that, coupled with kind of the academic identity that they are building, would be a key part of sophomore year.
And so with all that exploration that takes place in sophomore year, by junior year, students usually have an idea of what they really want to pursue. They're developing purpose. They're starting to articulate what their goals are. A lot of our students junior year are starting to now delve in a little bit deeper into their major classes. They're starting to fulfill other related electives, such as their business related elective, their arts and science requirements. And then as part of Bentley's curriculum, we do have a GB core requirement that they're continuing into their junior year. So typically students in their junior year are taking GB 310 and GB 320. And so with purpose also comes starting to think about what's coming after college. So we're starting to think about maybe graduate school, internships, maybe pursuing academic internship for credit. They're starting to kind of now develop their identity as someone who's kind of evolving into adulting. So they're also starting to think about the study abroad experience. If they are planning on studying abroad, they should kind of be formalizing that by now. And so they're starting to attend different things on campus to kind of start focusing in on their skill sets. And so junior year really is about purpose. Is there anything else you'd like to add about junior year? Yeah, internships is a very big deal during junior year. So we see a lot of students starting to go to their appointments with the Career Development Center as well, and starting to kind of hone in on how to pursue those internships.
So oftentimes it feels like we blink in its senior year. We certainly feel it. I think students feel it. As families, you will probably feel it. So senior year really becomes a time for students to kind of reach closure on a lot of things. And so from an academic perspective, it's really important that they make sure that they're on track to complete their degree requirements. We encourage seniors to do that at the very start of the year. So that way, if they're missing a prerequisite course that they need to take in the fall to complete their studies in the spring, right, that they have the opportunity to course correct for that. So from a curriculum perspective, there's one GB left for senior year. It's kind of the capstone course for the general business sequence, and really is drawing upon what students have covered in those prior courses. And they're really finishing up their major requirements, elective requirements. They're doing a minor, all of those other programs, kind of finishing those in a timely manner. They might have a executive board position in a student organization. They're probably conducting a job search. Towards the end of the year, they might be looking for an apartment and working through things like utilities. So it's the start of adulting, moving out of kind of the college experience and starting to think about next steps for them. I think senior year is also an important time for reflection for students, really thinking back on their Bentley experience, which I think tends to happen a lot socially, but I would also encourage students to do it from their academic experience. What are the explicit and implicit lessons they've learned in and outside of the classroom? How do they want to spend their final months as an undergraduate student? This is a really special time in their lives. And when you suddenly realize that it's quickly drawing to a close, being intentional about how they want to spend that time. Recognizing that there can be many emotions that come with finishing up the undergraduate experience, and appreciating that a year from now, they're probably not going to be living with all of their best friends. Staying motivated is key. Senioritis can be just as real in college as it can be in high school. And so really staying focused on completing the tasks in front of them. And I think it's also important that they celebrate their accomplishments. Our students tend to do a lot in their time with us. And so I think taking time out to really congratulate themselves and take pride in all that they've accomplished is also a key part of senior year.
And so throughout their academic journey, we do have different resources available to students. We always encourage students to talk to their professors if issues come up in the classroom. It's one way of them starting to kind of advocate for themselves and also establish relationships with faculty members in the classroom. But we also offer different academic learning centers, and you see a list here. So if a student is struggling in math, we do have the Math Learning Center, and it's, they have peer tutors there as well they can get connected with. We also have the Writing Center for students who are looking for assistance with writing essays, excuse me. We also have the LEAF and the library. So these are different resources we have on campus. More than that, we also have a interim grade report. So what that means is if a student is not doing well in a classroom, for example, a faculty might issue one of these to alert the academic advisors that that student is experiencing some challenges. And then the academic advisor would then take the initiative of contacting that student and kind of working with them to see how we can help them and maybe guiding them to the different resources on campus. One of the experiences I have with a lot of my advisees is sometimes it can be intimidating to ask for help. So us coming in and kind of helping facilitate that with the student is really important for them. Another way of getting assistance is we do have the tutoring program that is through our office. So if they go to these different learning centers and they need a little bit more individualized support, they are able to come to our office and connect with one of the academic advisors, and we are able to then facilitate them getting connected to individualized tutoring or maybe small group tutoring. And then again, that's done through our office. So if the student feels like I've gone to the Math Learning Center, I need something a little bit more, they would come to our office and we would help connect them to some tutoring support services. And so we really think of ourselves as kind of like a wraparound service. We want to make sure that holistically a student is being taken care of. And so these are the ways we would help support students if they do come across different bumps or challenges. Oh, of course, yes. So the Click Lab is for students who are looking to, maybe they're taking a modern language class and they're looking to kind of engage or immerse themselves more in the language. So that's one way they would do that. The CIS Sandbox is for students. When we think of CIS, we think of computer information systems. So if they're taking that IT 101 class, that is one way they could get additional support through the CIS Sandbox. The LEAF Lab is the economics and finance. So what if they're having trouble in their GB 112, GB 212 classes, that is where they would go to get assistance as well. So all of these different acronyms and different centers are really specialized in the different subjects that we offer here at Bentley. So again, depending on what they need assistance with, they might go to these different resource centers to get assistance. Again, Media Culture Lab, that's more of our, if they're doing anything related to Photoshop, media, things like that. And then the Writing Center in the ESL Center for students who English is not their native language, they might get support there. And they'll help support them. And so it's really kind of a step-by-step process. They would connect with the professor first, then they would go to the appropriate learning center. And if that's not enough, then they would connect with us to get more of that individualized support. Is there anything you'd like to add on?
No, I think just reinforcing what you said about, we try to normalize reaching out and using these resources, because for some students, there may be one class and this might be the first time in their entire academic career where they're struggling in a course, and that can feel very uncomfortable and very disorienting. So I think as much as we and perhaps you all as well can kind of encourage students, well, the resources are there, just stop in and use them, because they're there because students need them, and so really to take advantage of that.
And we really, I can't stress this enough, we really, really try to support our students as much as we can. We're very invested in our students doing well here. We are a smaller institution, so that's one of the benefits of coming here. You kind of get us from the beginning. So I can't stress this enough because it's one of the things I have conversations with my advisees all the time about. So
the interesting thing that I'll add to that is technically most students are not required to connect with an advisor, right? We are a resource that is ready, willing, able to help. But usually it's up to the student to come and utilize us as a resource. And so same type of thing, right? We have a lot of students that come in frequently. We have some students that we barely ever see, but we're happy to help students, you know, at any point and with any type of question that they might have. So we want to talk a little bit about, from our perspective, how you can perhaps help your student from as they navigate the academic experience at Bentley. In our field, challenging and supporting students is a key principle. And so I would imagine that you find that you're doing the same thing. And I think one of the things that we would encourage you to challenge our students to do is to explore options. It is very common for students to come to Bentley with a very clear idea of what they want to study, and that's fantastic. And sometimes that's exactly what they do. But we also want them to be open to learning about new opportunities, new programs that maybe weren't on their radar, or as their interests evolve, they might find that they're shifting what they, you know, thought that they were going to study. And so to really just encourage them to keep all options open, you know, have that thing that you've had in mind maybe since 10th grade, but also just explore and see what's available to you and how that connects to what the student's looking to do. We spoke to new students a couple of weeks ago. One of the things we were talking about is how important it is to have a plan of what you want to do during your time here, because as we mentioned, it goes by very quickly, but also to be very open to changing that plan. So if you realize, even if it's midway through, that this just isn't working for you, or this just isn't kind of what you thought it was going to be in terms of what you're studying for your major, again, explore options and see, you know, what it looks like to maybe change to something else along the way. And also to try something new. I think one of the benefits of being kind of in college is there are so many experiences that are available to students that they just have to take advantage of. And so to really encourage them to maybe stretch a little bit outside of their comfort zone, but they can benefit from an experience that they haven't had before. And then, as we've mentioned before, really supporting them in terms of asking questions. I think that, and hopefully your experience here this weekend will prove that this is a very welcoming community. And it is very common, you know, as I'm walking out at the end of the day, just have somebody ask me a random question, probably has nothing at all to do with what I actually do for Bentley, might be directions for somewhere, where do I go for this? But I think and hope that students find that they can ask anybody any question. And even if that person is not the appropriate resource, they will help them figure out who that appropriate resource is. But above and beyond kind of generally asking questions, but especially in the classroom, you know, we also at that meeting that we had with new students a few weeks ago, we were trying to encourage them to remember that no question is a silly question. That if they're sitting in a classroom and something's not clicking, chances are quite high that somebody else in that classroom has the very same thought, the very same question. So they're probably helping others by asking that question. And to really continue to do that and to stay curious and don't continue on missing a key concept and then finding themselves, you know, a little bit behind in terms of whatever that presentation was in class that day. And of course, discovering their Bentley path, right? This is the idea that they might have a plan in mind and figuring out what that might look like. Again, what's on their academic to-do list while they're here. And then again, how that might shift and evolve over time. And then of course, we all want them to succeed. That's exactly, as Kat said, why we do what we do. And of course, I'm sure that's high on your list as well. So I oftentimes will have conversations with students where, you know, they've got a pretty intense semester in terms of what they're doing. And I find myself oftentimes saying that I want them to get to the end of the semester being healthy and whole, not just checking the box on the courses, but really being healthy, especially, you know, as of late, you know, the little things that we used to take for granted that we can't anymore. And so we are very focused on the whole student and trying to make sure that they are doing well overall, not just in their classrooms. Now, we're actually did quite comfort time. We wanted to open it up for questions that you might have for us. Sure. So the official deadline is typically February 25th of sophomore year, so early spring of sophomore year. The primary exception to that would be students who are applying to study abroad. The study abroad application deadline is usually a few weeks before that, and so they have to have their major declared by the time they submit their study abroad application. I should mention, do we have families of like sophomores, juniors, or seniors here? Okay, so Paul and I were actually just talking about this. If your student took advantage of the summer trimester where we had a huge array of courses happening this summer, they might be further ahead. And so if they know what their major is going to be, I would actually encourage them to declare it this term, not wait, you know, even if February would technically be their deadline, right? Particularly if they're a sophomore, to get that major declared. They all have a DegreeWorks audit tool where they can see their degree requirements. And it doesn't show their major requirements until they declare the major. So if they know what their major is going to be, the sooner that they get that declared, the DegreeWorks audit will update and it will be an even more helpful tool for them. There's a way that they can do what's called a what if in the audit and preview the major requirements, but they'd have to do that every time they access the audit. So once they get the major declared, the audit will reflect those requirements. Majors for us are 8 to 10 courses. So it's a chunk of the curriculum. Students do 40 academic courses total, and a major again will be 8 to 10 out of those courses. So again, if they're ready to declare earlier, they can, and they probably would want to. Sure.
Someone asked, what is the deadline to apply for the honors program at once? Yeah, so the honors program is
For first year students is done while they're applying to Bentley University. And so as they go through the application process, Christian Rubio, who actually runs the honors program, will review and invite that student to be part of the honors program. If the student decides to join the honors program during their time at Bentley, they would be in contact with Christian Rubio as well. And Christian Rubio would walk them through the process of applying to the honors program and reviewing the application with them then. So I hope that answers your question. I don't know if you want to add anything to that. Yeah. Yes, that is such a great question. And it's a question we get all the time. So I'll take a piece of it. So students can apply for internships, as early as first year, second year. However, if they're looking for academic internship for credit, that's a little different. So maybe you can talk a little bit about academic internships for credit.
So we have 2 ways that students can do an internship for credit. And so sometimes this varies whether the student is looking for credit for the internship or if the employer perhaps requires that the student get credit. The most common one is probably our 3-credit academic internship course. So this would be an academic course that coincides with the work experience that the student is doing. Usually it's credit within the student's major. But what the student would do is reach out once they've secured the actual job. They would work closely with the Career Development Center for their resources in terms of securing the internship itself. But to do it for credit, the student would reach out to the applicable department. So depending on the nature of the work that the student's doing, they would reach out to the corresponding department. There's a faculty internship coordinator designated in each department, share what they're going to be doing for the work, and the faculty internship coordinator would determine if the student can take the internship course. And then they would do that, the academic deliverables tend to be like weekly readings, journal entries, some papers, but they're not physically going to class like they would for a typical course. The piece that I'll mention is, students will sometimes do that during the term, and that academic internship course is one of their 5 courses for that semester. Sometimes though, the student will be doing the internship in the summer. And if they do the academic course with that internship in the summer, there was a tuition charge for that because they're earning 3 credits. The other internship opportunity we have for credit is a 1-credit internship. It doesn't require as many work hours. It can be more consolidated. And this one students can do one time. In this case, they would fill out a form, submit it to one of the associate deans. And if that gets approved, they would have a smaller workload again, because it's only a 1-credit course. And then in that case, the 1 credit can only serve as an elective. So this would be outside of the major. But again, it becomes a really helpful opportunity if the employer is requiring that the student get credit. So the 1 credit is probably not going to be hugely helpful in terms of a degree completion perspective, but it can be helpful. But again, could keep that opportunity open if they are required to get internship. This can also be really beneficial for our international students who have to do an internship for credit per their CPT requirements.
So transition to college is quite different, right? Credit change, especially from COVID. And yeah, my son, that's right. There's no question about it. And I'm not worried so much about the transition coming in, but maybe somebody's not so familiar with reaching out and asking for help. And the resources are tremendous here. I can see that, and that's why I chose. So I guess my question is to articulate a little bit more about like how does a student, right? How do they guide them through that asking for help? Because maybe somebody's not as familiar.
that question a little bit further? Sure.
So I'll do my best to kind of reframe your question because it was a really good question. So I guess what you're asking is, as a first year student, coming into Bentley, what are the paths to getting connected to these resources on campus? And how does a student who maybe is a little bit coming off of COVID, coming off of just senior year in high school, how do they start getting acquainted with maybe the different people or the different things that are going on campus? Is that what you're asking?
We're focused socially now, he's focused with looking at opportunity.
Yeah.
And all these different things are coming at him. Different academic person.
Yeah.
You understand? That's just so somebody doesn't get lost in it. How do they, that advice can help, some guidance. That's all.
Yeah, and so I'll take half of it and then maybe you can give, because this is something that, we feel very strongly about. It's something I feel very strongly about, making sure students have a positive experience here at Bentley. But with so many things going on, it could be easy to feel very overwhelmed by everything, right? They want to make friends, they want to do well academically, they want to join a fraternity or sorority, they want to join clubs. So I can see a student being very overwhelmed during their first year. And so what I would say is that first year seminar is really important for a student because that's where they're getting connected to a faculty member specifically who is going to support them that first year. But really what I see, and I would encourage all of you to do, is really tell your student to come see us. To come meet with us. We have so many different programs on campus to put ourselves out there. We go into the advising calls. We try to make ourselves present for our students, but it really takes also the student kind of taking that leap and coming to see us as well, so we can then know them and familiarize ourselves with their academic goals and then kind of help spur that, okay, you know us now. It's not that scary. We can kind of walk you through your academic journey. And so that's really my perspective as an academic advisor. Val, do you want to kind of share yours?
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. The other thoughts that come to mind, if your student lives in the residence halls, their RAs are a key kind of resource to keep an eye on them, make sure that they're leaving to go to class, right? Kat had mentioned earlier the progress reporting system that we have. So if a student does start to struggle academically, that professor will typically issue a progress report, and the assigned advisor, right? So if it's a first year student, that's the first year seminar instructor. Other students, it would be somebody in our office. We're going to be CC'd on that progress report. And so we will oftentimes reach out to the student as well to suggest that they connect with us. Let's talk about how you can move forward in this class. The other thing, and this is going to sound kind of loose, but it truly happens, I think, on this campus all the time, and that is the power of what other students suggest. So many times we'll talk with students who are like, oh, my friend met with you and said it was really helpful, so now I'm here. And so I think if they, even if their focus has been on the social piece, that can oftentimes reveal important help information or suggestions or encouragement to use resources on campus. Because if one student, that your student is connected to is like, oh, I tried this and it was really helpful, that might encourage your student to do the same. So I think that has great power as well. So I think those tend to be kind of the more, well, the progress reporting would be more of a formal structure, but the other two tend to be more informal ways that students can get connected. And again, this comes back to our idea of trying to normalize using resources, right? There's a reason why they exist. And we want students to take advantage of them.
Oh, yes, they should know. Yes, they should know. They should. It's on their work day, and I hope maybe, we're throwing a lot of software terms and a lot of acronyms on you, but I would say most students for the majority do know what work day is, and that's a very important tool in their academic experience. And so on there, they can actually find their assigned academic advisor as well as other support networks. So we work very closely with other offices such as the Center for International Student Scholars, Multicultural Affairs. So we're consistently trying to, again, wrap around service for our students, support them holistically. So they can definitely find us on there as well.
They use that first, or the students need to reach out.
But we actually just emailed all of our advisees last week. just to welcome them back, remind them how they can connect with us. And when I say us, I mean the office, right? So just going back to the idea that if a student has me as their assigned professional advisor, and they want to make an appointment, if Kat's available before I am, just pure scheduling wise, they are more than welcome to meet with her. They do not have to meet with me every time, or they might come to drop-ins and talk with a peer advisor. So anyway, so we tend to do that, particularly at the start of the year, oftentimes at the start of the spring term as well, just to remind them, hey, we're here. So connect with us. The other thing is if they're not sure, if they can't find it work day, they could always pop by the office and just ask our front desk.
We have two questions we're going to take. Okay. Question. So we do offer in person, and now we're offering the modality meeting over Zoom as well. We find, it's worked well through the COVID experience as well. Some students, want to meet from their room. So we do offer that, but we are strongly encouraging students to come and meet with us in person. And we are taking all the precautions right now to make sure students feel safe and everyone feels good coming into the office. So right now we're going through drop-ins just to give you a sense of where we are right now as academic advisors. These first 2 weeks, we offer drop-ins. All academic advisors are available. And we're available in the morning through Zoom, in the afternoon through Zoom, and then in person kind of that afternoon time slot. So we're consistently just meeting with students, throughout the day. So both, the different learning centers might have different modalities that they're offering. Specifically in our office, I know that they're offering in person as well as through Zoom, just because some of our peer advisors, we've noticed in the evening, students don't want to, not that they don't want to, but maybe they don't want to come up to campus. They're now in their res halls. So we are, offering Zoom as one way of still connecting with students and keeping them on track for tutoring. Of course, I'm so sorry.
Sorry, yeah, I keep moving away. Does that answer your question? I hope that does. Okay.
Unfortunately, I can't think of a way that happens. And the reason for that is we have to abide by FERPA, which is a federal regulation that restricts what we can share with a third party unless the student has signed a waiver that says, you can talk with my parent about this information. So there's nothing built into that just because it's not like a blanket process across the board. So what I would suggest is check in with your student. What tends to happen over the course of the semester, so particularly in the fall, October tends to be midterm season, and it can be spread out over the entire month of October. So it tends to be a really hectic and sometimes stressful time for students. So if you're in regular communication with a student to ask how things are going, it's provided that they're, open in terms of sharing that, that's probably the best way. But there would not be the equivalent, like if you had something while they were in high school where you would regularly get, report cards. Unfortunately, we're not able to do that because they're all adults, and we have this federal guideline that really restricts what we can share with anybody other than the student themselves. So I'm looking this way because our office does not work directly with placement. That is the Career Development Center. We're focused purely on academics. Paul is in that office. I don't know if you want to speak to that a little bit. While you're here.
Here you go.
Is this the mic?
Yes.
Hi, folks. I'm Paul Stanish, and I do work in our Pulse Career Development Center. I will say this. I think right after this session, my director will be speaking up in the auditorium, and she's going to give a whole overview for our department, the career development programs, which we use as a catalyst for the internship search. I don't want to take away from this session right now. If you want to catch me on the side for a minute afterwards, I'm happy to answer very specific questions about placement, how COVID may or may not have affected that. I will say in 2020, because we have that data, I think we were still in the 98 percentile of students for placement. We don't have all the 2021 yet. We typically won't have all that data until February. But I'll just say this, we adapted really quickly. Within a week, we were right back in meeting with students for appointments, and then we kept that that process up all of last year, and all indicators are showing we're going to have very similar numbers. But I'm happy to talk about networking, companies, and all that on the side afterwards. Okay. Sure.
Just while we're on the topic of the Career Development Center, one thing that might be helpful to mention is when we have students coming in for an advising conversation and they have questions or, totally understandable concerns about, if I want to do this job, what's the academic program that I should do, right? We'll have a conversation with that, but we'll also refer them to the Career Development Center because they have the feedback from employers about what they're looking for, the data to support that. So it tends to be what I'll call like a dual advising effort. So we're covering it from an academic perspective, but because we're not getting the feedback directly from employers, we wouldn't want to overstep and speak on their behalf. So we'll encourage the student to connect with Paul's office as well.
Yes, so during first year seminar, we work very closely with faculty members to assign them to these first year seminars. And the reason is we want to really introduce students to faculty members and getting acquainted with how to navigate those conversations. They're really the ones who can speak to the curriculum too as well. So that doesn't take away from them connecting with us. And oftentimes first year students will still get connected with us by emailing our general account, by setting up appointments. And that's something that is discussed in first year seminar as well. So it's kind of like a hand-in-hand collaboration between the faculty member and us. But then by sophomore year, they could still continue their relationship with their first year seminar instructor, but then we're kind of taking over in the fact of like digging into what their long range plan or what their academic goals are. But oftentimes I still see students reaching out to their first year seminar instructor because they've developed that relationship. I don't know if there's anything more specifically to the first year seminar that you, okay.
But we'll hang around if anybody wants to connect with us. Thank you so much for joining us and for your engagement. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you so much.